Your father was a sheikh.
Yeah.
I'll translate a ritual slaughter. You don't have to translate. I'll translate. Okay.
After he got married, he was sitting and learning for a while, and then he learned to be a sheikh, and he took on a position in a little village which was called Volasko. And there he worked as a sheikh for the whole area, not only for that community by itself. He was a very religious man, a very learned man, and he was trying to help people as much as he could. Up until the war, we were pretty well off. But when the Hungarians came in and took over the part where we lived, he was barred from shechting. Matter of fact, he was put under house arrest in 1940. He wasn't allowed to be seen with, to talk to more than one person at a time.
Why was he persecuted?
Because he was considered to be the leader of the community. And that's what they done. The Germans and the Hungarians, they tried to keep the leaders from the communities, not to have much to do with the ordinary people.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that, I don't know. I think that they were afraid for an uprising or anything like that.
Strict man. How was he?
As a father, he was a very nice. He was strict as far as to keep us that we should be learning, but he was very, very nice.
Were there a lot of distractions, or the street? Were there pulled people away from learning in your town?
Not necessarily. It was small villages. There was no such a thing as movies, or television didn't exist at that time. So it wasn't that much of a distraction. But one thing, he didn't want to let us go, the boys especially, to a public school, because the schools were mixed, girls and boys, so he didn't want that we should attend public school.
Was he a Hasidic person?
Yes, he was a
Tell us about
Hasidic.
this. Did he go to Rebbe's? Tell us a little bit. Did he ever take you along? Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, he was Hasidic, and he was a Chassid of the Satmar Rebbe, and he used to travel to the Satmar Rebbe. He was also a Chassid of the Munkacher Rebbe. He was traveled over there. One time he took me along. I was a young child of about between 8 and 10 years. And I saw the old Munkacher Rebbe, what they called. He made a big impression on me. It's the first time that I saw a Rebbe, how he feared Tish, how he was, and how he was speaking to the people, and it was a sight to see, as there were a lot of big crowds coming in.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 6 sisters. I was the second one. There was a sister older than me, and I was the second one.
So how was the Shabbos table? Everybody got to tell us a little Shabbos visitors.
Well, Shabbos used to be very nice. We used to sit around the table singing, and we had a very nice meal. In comparison over there, it was called a nice Shabbos meal, and it was very joyous.
Did your father have a good voice?
Fairly good.
No.
No, my father. He had a fairly good voice.
What was your favorite Shabbos song around the table? Just want to give me a little taste of one of the songs that you remember from the Shabbos table?
I really don't remember. Really, not a one tune.
Not one tune from the Tish
No.
for Shabbos?
No.
Okay.
It's hard to imagine, but that's that's the truth.
You never met the Satmar Rebbe, though?
Yeah, I met the
about
Satmar Rebbe more than at one time. I know one time he came to town not far from us, and he stayed there for a few days, so the people should be able to come to see him, to give him kvitlach, if you know what that is. And my father also came, and he had to go away because he had to go shechting, so he left a kvittel with me, and he left 10 Czechische kronen I should give the Rebbe, and I was trying to get close to the Rebbe. It was impossible. Since I was a young boy, I crawled under the table, and I came up right at the Rebbe's lap. The people nearly wanted to kill me, but the Rebbe was very gentle man, very nice. And he figured that I probably want something, so he took me on his lap. He asked me what I want. I said, well, I gave him the kvittel, and I gave him the money. I said my father left that, I should give him, and he read it. And then he gave me back the money. He said I should give it back to my father, and he blessed me, and he told I should tell my father everything should be good.
Yeah, that was Rabbi Yoel, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting. What, he gave you a bracha?
yeah.
That's very interesting. What did you go to Cheder? Where did you learn basics, holidays, Chumash?
Well, we had a cheder in our community. Just one teacher, one rabbi, and he was learning with the small boys, with the older boys. The older boys used to get up early, like 5 o'clock in the morning. He was learning with them, and then during the day he was learning with the smaller boys, and we used to learn by ourselves.
Tell me something about your mother.
My mother was a very gentle person. She was small, not tall, and she managed the household. And they lived a very, very nice life with my father.
That's a picture. Let me just pull this up for 1 second. Can this come off the wall?
It should come off.
Just, you know, Marty, I'll just go a little wide on this one. Just tell us who that, just take a,
This is
go down a little bit so we can, accept it, can you see him? Okay.
Can we raise it?
If,
Can you lift it up a little bit?
Just a second, we're seeing her in this. Can you just sit over here in a second with her?
I think we can move, like, you don't wanna make a picture for me.
No, right now, yeah, you're right, no, I don't,
I'm
yeah.
interfering.
No, right now you're in the shot. I just want to hear who this gentleman is and why you have his picture up on your wall. You're not sharp on that one, Marty.
Okay.
All you need is just a quick cutaway of it, because, okay, just keep it for 1 second and then we can go a little wider. A little bit wider still. Lower down, that's it. No, they'll keep the head. I want to see the head. Okay, now we got the cutaway. Now go wide and let's see him holding this picture. Okay.
this was
Just 1 second, hold on just a second. Now go really wide. No.
Hold on. Go out of focus.
Should be able to focus. Why is it locked in this? This should be locked. I need a little bit of, okay. Hold on a second. It's a little too wide, and it's too centered. I want him off to the side.
Okay, hold on. One second.
Yeah, I want to see the monitor there.
It just looks like out of focus to me, I'm sorry, but hold on.
Yeah, focus on his eyes. Okay, good. Now go wide.
Okay. No,
Go down a little bit.
around there.
So that we see too many things in the picture. Okay.
It's okay. That's okay where it is, man. That's fine.
Okay, tell us. Okay.
Except
Jack.
the light is in the picture.
I know, but all right, nobody will know what that is. Okay. You got too much headroom there. Cut the headroom a little bit,
Mhm.
and go a little tighter. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Tell us who that is.
That's my father's brother. He lived about 4 kilometers from us. He was also a sheikh, and he was in a bigger community than we were. He was very well off and a very, very learned man. He knew a few languages. He spoke perfect German and a perfect Hungarian, besides the Jewish language. And he used to read German papers written in German.
Mhm. So both of them, your father and your uncle, were both sheikh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
sorry.
Do me a favor, if you can hold it one more time, let me just take it. I just want to do a slow pan.
Tell us who taught you your first lessons? Reishis Chachma, Maidani. Who taught you your basic? Was your father, your mother? What did they teach you about Avodas Habayre? As a young child, what do you remember?
Well, as a young
Hold
child,
on one second. Did you raise this like?
Was it not level?
Yeah, it's not level.
Okay, so then
You were lower than, did,
what?
maybe when you leaned over, it just popped up.
Lower this leg.
Yeah, you see, the camera's not level.
One second. Not moving. Okay, one second.
Thank
There's a way of leveling it back here, you know, huh?
Yeah, I see it right there.
Is it running up?
Yeah, nice.
Why,
Okay, you wanna?
Shut off the TV.
Okay.
Is it rolling?
Roll.
Sure.
I got the record light. And I got.
well, as a small child, my mother used to teach us how to make bruchas and to say brucha with us. Then when we got a little bit bigger, my father used to teach us how to read and the alphabet and telling us all kinds of stories about God and taught us about Shabbos and about all the laws of Jewish people have to know.
Was this sort of something that you naturally wanted to do for your parents, or was this something that they had to force you to
Well, they didn't force us to do, but they used to teach us with laugh. They used to give us candy, and we liked that to have the attention. No, no,
do? It was
not
just,
in our time. No.
all the Jewish young people in your
All the
town
Jewish
were-
young people were going to Cheder. Some succeeded, some didn't succeed, but there was no other movement.
Was that because you were in a small town and?
Probably, most likely, because it wasn't a big town that it didn't have no influence from other
The outside.
outside. Can you remember any of your Cheder Rebbe's? What the names of them?
No, just a story, or what were they like? Funny, strict, difficult? Were you a good student? Did you give a lot of time?
Well, I was a good student. I gave him a hard time too. But the rabbis used to be very strict with us. We had to obey everything. If not, we used to be spanked.
So you had to stay in line.
Right.
Now tell us a little bit about, okay, so basically everything was going well, you were 22, the war broke out in Poland in 1939, so you're already 17 years old.
Well,
was
when
the-
it broke out by us, when
was
the
a few years
Hungarians
later.
came in, it was
Was-
also 39. I mean,
so
Hungarians
so the Hungarians
occupied
came.
us
So basically, up
39.
until you were about 17, you were
Mhm.
going to yeshivas, you stayed in your town, Ilmnitsa. You
Uh,
didn't go out of town to yeshiva, you stayed in your town.
No, I did go out of town to yeshiva. When I was 15 years old, I went to yeshiva near Pressburg. And I was there for a half a year, and then I went for a year in Munkac. That was until I became 17 years old. And then we couldn't travel anymore because they restricted Jews
So tell
from
us what happened in
traveling.
1939 when the war broke out, what happened in your town?
Well,
You were under Czechoslovakia up until 39.
up until 39. 39, they really occupied just part of that area. Like Munkac was occupied by the Hungarians, and I stayed in Munkac because I learned there. And my hometown was still remained Czechoslovakia. And while Munkac was cut off from the surrounding areas, life was very hard because they couldn't bring in any wood, or couldn't bring in any food, and then there was shootings going on because there was the border there between the Czechs and the Hungarians, and it used to break out shootings. So my father asked us to it was me and a brother of mine, we learned there. So my father wanted us to come home, but it wasn't so easy. We had to have papers to show that we don't belong in Munkac. So he sent over papers, and then we went to the police, and we told the police that we are not from here, we are Czechoslovakians, and we would like to go back. So they arrested us, and the next morning they shipped us across the border to Czechoslovakia. And then a half a year later, they occupied the whole region, and our town was occupied too.
Let me see. You were influenced by Satmar and Munkac, who were both very anti-Zionist. Did you get any such messages, or did they talk about that when you were growing up? Did you ever hear them talk about the Zionim?
Not really. I personally, when I was 15, I did belong to Agudas Yisroel, which was without my father's knowledge, because he wouldn't have approved of it. But that was only, I had connections with him only while I was in yeshiva the first time near Pressburg. And after I left there, I didn't have no connection with Agud anymore until after the war. After the war, I joined again.
Oh, yeah, because I was reading about the Munkacher and the Satmar. They sort of saw the war in some way related to these Zionist movements. They sort of blamed the Zionism to some extent. I was wondering if that was something that was
Well, they
something you heard.
wasn't. They weren't talking with that in the schools and in the yeshivas. And they were privately. They were expressing very much against the Zionist movement.
Okay. But you weren't really involved. So in 39, you found yourself in Munkac. You got papers, and you managed to get back
To my home.
to Hungary. So now you're
Yeah.
17. The war is going on. You're in Czechoslovakia now. You're back in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, well, after they occupied our part, they closed down the schools, the Jewish schools. So the people wanted that the children should learn Hebrew and the Talmud and the Chumash. So, and they couldn't bring in a teacher because by law you weren't supposed to move from one place to the other. So I was a teacher for about 6 months until the authorities found out. When they found out, they came looking for me, and I escaped. And that was the end of the school.
So you broke the law teaching Torah?
Right.
It was against, who said
Yeah.
the Czechoslovakians?
No, that was the Hungarians.
No, it was you, okay, first they took over Munkac, and
Then
then
they
they took
took
over
over
your area.
our area
And they
too.
made a law against schools?
I don't know if that law was official from the president of the country, but every regional commander who had anything to do could make his own laws. So over there, they closed down the Jewish schools, and they didn't let any more Jewish schools to be going on.
So why did you put yourself at risk to keep the yeshiva going? How old were you now?
I was about 18.
So you took a risk and opened up a yeshiva sort of to teach kids? How many
Yeah,
students did you have?
I had about 18 to 20. Well, the risk we had to take, otherwise there would have been nothing going on for the children. And we figured they'll never find out. We were tutoring in private homes. In other words, we used to move from one place to another, the whole school. But eventually they found out about it. Either somebody reported it or whatever had happened, I don't know. But when they came looking for me, I happened to be in shul for davening. There was a small boy who was maybe 7 years old. Soon he heard that they are looking for me. He knew already that there is some kind of danger for me. So while the police were standing by the door, he ran between the legs of a policeman, and he jumped off a porch, and he was running to the shul to tell me that the police are looking for me. But he had enough sense. The shul was very close from there. He didn't run straight to shul. He ran around a bad way, so the police wouldn't know that he went. And he came into the shul. He almost collapsed from running so hard. And he hollered out, he says, Yaakov, that was my name, the police are looking for you. And I just started Shemon Esrei. I opened the window and jumped right out of the window and disappeared. And they told me that a minute later the police walked into the shul. And they were looking for me, but they couldn't find me. And then for a while,
Why'd you do this? You could have gotten into big trouble.
couldn't. We done a lot of things which we could have gotten into trouble. I mean, there was no way to make a living, and I used to be later on in the black market, and that was more chance to take. But we had to do in order to make to have some food on the table.
But this you weren't doing for food on the table. This you were doing for some other business.
Well, this we were doing for both. It helped out with food on the table too. And also it helped out to give the children an education.
So this was now 39. Tell what happened. Still with your family up until when?
I was with my family up until 43. On Rosh Hashanah 43, I got a call to go into the army. And actually, they took us into the army. I went in. We got for basic training, and then from the basic training, after we finished the basic training, they put us into a labor camp.
You were drafted into the...
I was drafted into the army,
The
Hungarian
Hungarian
army, yeah.
And what kind of tasks were you given in the Hungarian army? What were you...
Well, I only was there for the basic training. I was in the engineering corps. I got the training in the engineering corps to build bridges, roads, railroads, that kind of stuff.
Hungary was an ally then of the Nazis.
Of the Nazis, right.
So how did they treat the Jews in the army?
It depends. Where I was, it wasn't too bad. I mean, we worked very hard, but we did receive enough food. Whoever ate, I didn't need the food because it wasn't kosher. So for 9 months, I just lived on bread and water, and that sometimes there wasn't even enough bread, but I managed. And after 9 months, there wasn't we weren't able to get enough bread either. So I had started eating, and at that time they wouldn't give me enough food either.
So you were in the Hungarian army for 9 months. This was
Well, I was there.
This was,
In the army, I was just for the basic training,
okay.
and then we were in the labor camp. But in the labor camp,
brigade.
yeah, but that
was hard work.
That was hard work, right? But we were at different places. I was actually with the labor brigade about a year and a half. And then we went into, they took us into Austria, and they took us into a concentration camp.
Were there other, so this whole labor brigade was Jewish young men?
Yeah, strictly Jews.
Because they didn't take Jews into the regular army, they sent
Right.
you for labor.
Right.
So how were the people in the labor brigade treated by their Hungarian?
It was different times, different places, when they had different needs, places where they really needed us bad. We were treated pretty good. But the work was very hard. We worked very long hours. And certain times we had commanders at the different places where we were treated very rough. And we were even getting some beatings, and they used to wake us up in the middle of the night to go out just for to give us a hard time.
Were you able to, was there any, in that brigade, were there people who davened, or whatever they
Well, whoever wanted to put film could put on film. I mean, during in the summertime, I used to put on film in the morning before we left for work. In the wintertime, I used to put on film lunchtime, and they gave us a break for lunch. I used to put on film at that time and dab a little bit, as much as I could, because I had to eat lunch too.
My father was also in the Polish army, and for all the time he was there, he avoided eating anything that was cooked in the army's kitchen, but he at least had, this was before the war, he had an uncle that lived not too far away, so twice a week he used to go over and get a meal over there.
But we were restricted. We couldn't go out of the camps, so we then had no way to get to food. It was just what we were able to get that they used to smuggle in.
You once told me a story, I forget, a few summers ago, when you told me about like how a bunch of the boys were praying, I forget what it was, davening and a kippur or something.
Well,
I know what the story was. Somebody was eating and
well, that was the first Yom Kippur that we were in, because I was drafted, it was Rosh Hashanah, and I left home in Sim Gedalia. There was a day after Rosh Hashanah. And for Yom Kippur, they put us into cars, the box cars, in the railroad. They were taking us to a place where we had the basic training, and that was just in the air of Yom Kippur. And while we were in the box cars, we started to davening, and we were fasting. And there was one boy who really didn't know that he was Jewish. Probably one of the parents must have been Jewish. So he waited. He wanted to see when we'll stop for eating, when we stop praying. He didn't pray. So he sat down to eat. And an officer from the Hungarian army came along, and he hit him over the face, and he said, "You see, your fellow Jews are praying and crying, and you are eating." So we had the unfortunate thing that both years, Yom Kippur, we were in a train. The next year, Yom Kippur, we were also in a train. We were shipped out to a different place to work in a different place. And we also davened in the train. The only thing is the last davening, Nila, we couldn't daven already because it was too early. So when we got out of the train, we asked our commander if he would give us an hour to be able to say the prayer. And that commander happened to be a Catholic. He knew all about what it is, so he took us aside and gave us time to daven.
It was, he understood what
He
important
understood,
was.
he knew, yeah.
Excuse me, that's one of the two things.
wanna
Can I
stop
ask
it
you,
if you
yeah,
don't
no, I
stop
just
it?
wanna
Yeah,
ask you,
just stop it.
this SS, the shutter speed,
Deze
1/100?
Ja,
Ja,
zoals
dat-
Stefan Wegel dat die examen.
I'm gonna.
This is geweest in the concentration
It's
camp.
bits and pieces.
There's pieces that are.
Yeah, and some of
Okay.
it's.
Tell us a little bit about the relationship, first of all, among the Jewish group, there were observant and non-observant Jews. What was
Well,
the
mostly
relationship?
one non-observant.
Yeah.
The relationship wasn't bad because everybody was in the same boat, everybody was suffering, so they couldn't be, but they were laughing at the ones who observed. They said, you see what's happening to us and you still believe. But the ones who were observant, they believed, didn't give up. Some of them strayed away, but the ones who strayed away weren't full-heartedly observant to begin with. It's just they came from a religious background and they had schooling a little, so they kept. But as soon they saw what's going on, they strayed away a little.
So you're saying that the non-observant fellow, they weren't soldiers, prisoners, this was a forced labor brigade. so,
Right.
would taunt and make fun and why it's still davening. They bothered them.
It's not that they bothered them, they just laughed at them that they still believe.
They ever ask you this question, and what did you respond?
Well, I responded, there's one thing, there's a saying, if you go to heaven, you don't know for sure if there is a heaven, but in case there is a heaven, then at least you'll be there.
Insurance. As they were saying, look at all this and the persecution. that we're enduring,
Persecution,
and
right.
was it davening.
Right.
What did it feel like after a hard day of forced labor to be able to daven? Did it help? I mean, in some way, just
Well, subconsciously it helped. We felt that this is happening, but we didn't anticipate really that it will happen, whatever it did happen. I mean, we didn't know nothing what's going on at home with our families. We didn't have any knowledge of what's going on. As a matter of fact, there was one time we went to work for a German outfit, just they borrowed us, they needed our work. And we met there a German officer. He said, that you think that you have it bad, that your families have it bad? He said, the families are living like he saw the camp in Wiener Neustadt. There was a model camp. And he saw that camp, so he said that they're living well and they're together with the families and everything. I mean, he didn't mean to mislead us. He himself didn't know. He just knew from that model camp that he saw.
Did you ever come across any decent, whether a Hungarian officer like the one you described, who let you daven on Nilo, or they all basically tried to torment you?
No. We came across quite a few decent ones, like that commander ours and the one who was in second of command. He was from civilian life. He was a lawyer. He was also a very decent man. But the laws were such that they had to be very strict with us. And even with the Germans, I worked in Hungary itself for Germans, that they used to borrow us for work. And I encountered very nice ones and encountered very bad ones.
So when were you transferred from the Hungarians to the Germans?
Approximately in March of 1945.
What happened in March of 45?
Well, they took us across. Most of Hungary fell to the Russians, so they took us across to Austria, and there they gave us over to the. I mean, we were already then under German command, and we were marching and going towards concentration camp. We were most of the time we were on march, walking. And the march was the worst of all. Most of the people died in the march because they didn't give any food. We lived mostly on grass. And when we got into the concentration camps, they didn't give us any food either. So whoever was still healthy was able to hold out. It held out. Whoever not died, most of them died out. There was very few who, like in the last camp when we were there just for 3 weeks. That was before we were liberated. We went in 18,000 Jews, and we were liberated after 3 weeks. 6,000 of them died, and after the liberation, another approximately 6,000 died because they weren't able to. They were so weak that they weren't able to take in any food, and the ones who did get food got sick from eating. And that was the thing. Very few were able to make it even after the liberation.
What are the names of some of the camps that you were in?
I was in Mauthausen, and I was liberated in Gunskirchen.
You ever get a number? You didn't get a number.
No. The numbers they only gave the ones who got to Auschwitz.
Why, you ever thought why did you manage to, of all those 18,000 people, only 6,000 survived? Why were you one of the fortunate ones?
I don't know. I always questioned that myself. The only thing I can think of that my father didn't want that the family should perish completely, so he looked out for me.
So how you looked when you were in the liberation?
Well, I was bedridden completely. I couldn't move. I weighed 76 pounds when I was liberated. I couldn't walk. I couldn't. I didn't see very well. I couldn't remember anything. I was completely dehydrated. And at one point I had passed out completely, and I was in a hospital. I mean, the Americans took me into a hospital, and there was more than, I wasn't the only one. I mean, there was a field hospital that they built. And at one point I had passed out, and I probably would have died. But there was in the same room there was another boy who was also in the same company as I was, and he was going in medical school. So he saw that I was dying, so he ran out and brought in a doctor, and it happened to be a Jewish doctor from the American Army. And he gave me intravenous something. He said that if they would have enough intravenous things to give us, they would probably save a lot of people, but they just didn't have. But he gave me a pint of intravenously, and I came to. And then they started feeding me slowly with crackers, with milk, and until they nourished me to, not to health, but I should be able to walk around.
Tell them how they picked you up from the garbage.
Well, when our camp was liberated on a Friday afternoon. It was close to Shabbos. As they said, I mean, that we saw, that the SS had surrounded our camps with barrels of gasoline, and they said that tonight they're going to burn the camp up. They said that the commander of the camp it wasn't an SS, he was a Wehrmacht. And he saw that the war ended, and he was afraid for his life. And the American army was very close already, and they claimed that he got in touch with the American army, and he told them what's going to happen. So they rolled in 15 tanks, came in, they broke through the lines, and they came in just the tanks, no infantry. Came into the camp, and the SS ran away, and that's how we were liberated. And then we walked out of the camp, and we started walking, but I wasn't able to walk. So I told the boys to leave me alone because I can't walk, and I went to the side of the road, and I went down to the gutter, and I was laying there. And as the American army was moving by with trucks and with jeeps, tanks, they were throwing food. So there were more people, but I couldn't get to it because I wasn't able to move around very well. And before I was able to get to something, somebody else grabbed it. And then towards evening, a truck pulled up with a couple of soldiers, and they came in, they saw that I'm still alive, they grabbed me and put me on the truck and took me to that field hospital. And that's how I got saved.
So it took you a few weeks. How long till you were able to get out of the hospital?
I was in the hospital about 3 to 4 weeks.
When did you find out what happened to your family?
Already after the war.
Did you go back to your hometown?
I went back to hometown, but didn't find nothing. I mean, our house was wrecked, the windows were all torn out, and we had a fairly new house. The whole house was about 5 years old. And they used it for a stall for cattle. I kept hay in it, and when I got home, I was the only one in that little village. So I didn't have nothing what to eat. I had to go to the Gentiles to beg for food. And then there was a little bigger town, not too far, so I went there. And there I didn't have where to stay either. And there they had a kitchen set up, but they didn't want to give any food to whoever doesn't belong in that town. So I used to beg out a little bit of food once in a while, and I used to sleep on places where they kept hay. I didn't have no room where to go to sleep, and I used to go to sleep there at night. When it was night, I didn't even tell anybody that I'm there. And then finally a couple more people came home, so we went back to our home.
When did you realize that nobody was coming back?
Right after the war, we heard what happened, and my parents were hidden for a while. And then they were caught, and I knew that they were taken to Auschwitz, and I was sure that nobody was alive.
Was it difficult after all you went through at that point in time, personally and what your family went through? Now that you were liberated and had recovered, did you just immediately resume observance and religious life, or it took a while for that to happen?
No, it took a while for that to happen. I was fighting with myself all along if to stay religious or not stay religious. But finally, the religious thing, my upbringing, took hold, and I went back. First of all, after we got home, there was at least a year, maybe more than a year, that we weren't able to get any kosher food. We ate whatever was available. And there was no places where to go to pray or to daven. I used to daven at home. Sometimes not. It depends. But after a while, after we went into to Germany again, I started to come back. Started eating kosher and observing Shabbos, and so started.
What was the debate, let's say, both at Studham, what was going on in your mind? Should I or shouldn't I? On the one hand, on the other hand? I mean, just give me an idea of what was the debate going on inside
The
that.
debate was going on if there is such a thing as a God. After all, what happened, and there were so many pious people over there, and such a big rabbis, and we suffered so much in the camps, and we still kept in the camps. We kept whatever we could, and so I debated with myself: is there or isn't there?
And you came over to decide that you're going to go
I'm gonna go religious again.
because
I figured it's something that happened, and we knew it happened when the temple was destroyed, and there were so many people killed, and I figured it was just a decree from heaven that should happen to the Jews. The reason why, we don't know.
Did you accept the possibility that this is punishment for some sins? Did that make any sense to you?
No. Because
you're not going to hear my question,
because
so tell me I didn't.
yeah.
So stay the whole sentence, because you're not going to hear what I'm saying.
Well, I didn't figure that there is a punishment for any sins, because whatever I knew mostly pious Jews. Even if they didn't know how to learn, and they weren't educated in Jewish, but they still observed Shabbos, and they observed Kashrus, and they observed what a Jew has to observe. And so I didn't believe that it could have came for a punishment.
Did you have friends that you went to yeshiva with, or so, who after the war couldn't return? And what was your feelings about such people?
Well, from my friends, first of all, there were very few left. There was maybe one or two of them, as far as I know. One isn't alive anymore. They also went back. They weren't really got really religious, but they observed like modern Orthodox.
But I mean, in your family or whoever survived, your friends, I mean, there were not. Did
Mhm.
everybody return like you? Was it automatic?
Yeah, from my family, everybody did return. I mean, a family. We were 4 cousins left, and I had about 4 second cousins. They were all remained from.
And this was from the upbringing that you got?
That was from the upbringing, right?
If let's say, for example, a lot of young people today, they leave Yiddishkeit without thinking too much for whatever reason, and they came to you and say, listen, Mr. Bohm, you went through all of this, you had more reason to walk away from it than anybody, and you stayed, and they ask you, tell us why we should stay. What could you tell them?
If somebody would ask me why they should stay, I would tell them we are Jews, we have Torah, and the Torah tells us to observe, and we are not supposed to ask any questions, and we just have to follow the Torah.
Okay. Any questions you got, Marty?
Yeah.
What did you have?
Thanks.
Just one second. Well, by the way, if I recall correctly, you had mentioned that you had when you finally found the kosher kitchen, it wasn't necessarily easy to get them to accept you. Was that correct? Am I remembering correctly?
That was correct. When we got into Germany,
Okay, just a second. Okay, you look at me. Tell me about the
Yeah.
story about when you finally heard, decided for whatever reason you're going to remain observant.
When we got into Germany, to a DP camp, which was a displaced persons camp, is in that camp where we went in, there were about 1,700 people. And it was they were kept up by the UNRWA. That is an international refugee organization. And later on they changed to IRA, which was International Refugee Organization, but at the beginning it was called UNRWA. They had set up those camps.
Where was this camp? Which one was that?
Degendorf.
Regendorf.
Yeah.
My wife was born in Regendorf.
Right. And the camp was it was a trafe kitchen. Nobody cared if it is trafe or not, but they had set up a small kitchen for about 50 to 60 people, which they made kosher, and those people had kosher. When we got in there, we got about 29 people. We came all from Czechoslovakia across the border. And I demanded for all of us that we want kosher, and they said we can't get it. So I went to the leader of the International Refugee Organization, to the commander who was over that camp, and I told him that we would like to have kosher food, and they say that they can't give us. He said there's no reason why you couldn't get kosher food. He said you can make the whole kitchen kosher. Said I can get you kosher meat, I can get you butter instead of lard, and it's no reason why you shouldn't be able to kosher. So we finally got to the committee of the camp, which was all from Jewish people, the campers. And I spoke to them, and first they didn't want to hear about it, but finally they agreed, and we made the whole kitchen kosher for the whole camp.
Why were they reluctant to make room for you?
Because, well, the ones that were reluctant, they said that they can't cook for more people. But the real reason, I don't know. I think the real reason was because they were getting more money than they used for the people for the kitchen, and they pocketed that money.
You're speculating, though.
I'm more or less sure than speculating.
Did you have to prove that in order to get a kosher meal that you're really observant?
No. No, once they saw me going to shul, they saw me coming to daven, and
You davened after the war. You say Asher, you say Tzadik Hashem b'chol derucha v'chusid b'chol maser. You had a problem saying that?
well, I had a problem saying a lot of things after the war in davening, and but I took it for granted that that's the way it's supposed to be. But in my mind, there was always a doubt about it.
But you went ahead despite your doubts.
I went ahead despite my doubts, like I say, because I was brought up like that. So I still done it. I still done it. I still put on film, and I kept whatever I was able to.
So you must have gotten some pretty powerful upbringing that there was so much in you that you couldn't.
Yeah, well, once you were brought up until 20, 21 years in such an environment, it's very hard afterwards just to give that up completely. I mean, there was a lot of doubts in me, and I was debating to keep it or not to keep it, but it was such a strong upbringing that it won out that it should stay religious.
All right, do you have a question or two? Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I have to tell you, I find this absolutely fascinating. This idea of, I mean, you've seen things that most people, thankfully, will never see. But the idea of maintaining your faith through all of this is pretty remarkable. I'm just kind of curious, was there, and you keep saying that there were some times when you had doubt. I'm just kind of curious, can you relate like one of the stories, like was there ever a time where you just said, you know, I don't know why I'm doing this, why do I continue doing this? I mean, you've seen things that, again, most people thankfully
Well,
will never see in their lifetime.
well,
Okay, by the way, don't look at him, just when you talk to me, because
Yeah,
they're not gonna
yeah.
let you look at him.
yeah.
Okay. See, he's the kind of
Well,
guy who's
yeah.
gonna watch this film, so he has to understand what you're saying.
While the war was going on, and we were in the camps, and we were brought up in an environment that we knew before Mashiach will come, there will be a lot of troubles. And I strongly believed that this is the time, the suffering, before Mashiach is coming. And we were sure, and I didn't have a doubt in my mind, that soon the war ends, Mashiach is gonna come. And that kept my faith all the way through the war. But after the war is then when I started doubting. That's already when I heard what happened to the whole family and what happened to most of the Jews, which are very few who survived, then doubts came in my mind.
So, I mean, you had to struggle. No, it didn't come without struggling. It didn't come, you know, young people.
Not-
they
nothing-
don't
nothing-
just take it for granted that you go through, you come out of the concentration camp and you come back, put on a Beit Tom's tefillin right away. You know?
Nothing went out without a struggle. Everything was a struggle. But once we started to believe, I got more stronger and stronger into believing, and I made up my mind when they told me when I'm coming to America, I won't be able to observe Shabbos if I want to get somewhere, but I had made up my mind, regardless what it's going to be, I'm going to observe Shabbos.
What was the biggest influence in the DP camps? I don't know, Satmar, I'm not the Kleisenberger. I mean, did you ever come across any people who had an influence on you, who made it easier, or who encouraged you in returning to Yiddishkeit? By the way, are you hearing this when he's playing with this? I'm just, do me a favor, just because we hear the, when you play with that.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
Oh, you can put your hand in front of, over it. Okay, just-
All right, I can't keep my hand on.
There, pick up your foot for 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Oh. Okay, yeah, go ahead. You can put your hand back. Put your hand back.
That's all right.
No, are you comfortable like that? Don't.
No, I'm comfortable.
Okay, now, I'm just wondering, was there anybody in the DP camps that we were in, Rabbanim, anybody who sort of, friends who encouraged you and maybe?
Well, in that camp where I was, there wasn't too many religious people. There were very few. And there was no rabbi as such that should have an influence on anybody. It just came to me by myself
Okay.
and with friends.
You have a question?
Yeah, kind of curious, your granddaughter is going to be married? Is that?
Yeah.
No. Are you happy about the education your children got here and your grandchildren as well?
How's it different from the education you got? If it's the same or different or better or worse, in what way is it different?
Well, the education that my children have here is a better education than I had, and for a much longer period of time. And I'm very happy with the education my children have and the way they're conducting themselves. And also the grandchildren. I have grandchildren which are big Talmidei Chachomim, which are sitting and learning up until still sitting and learning, and they will probably sit and learn maybe for their life.
Did you, Baruch Hashem, you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
Little Fanny has
Honey, yes.
kids, yeah.
And
Was there a
help
period in your
them.
time that you that you realized that did you think that you were ever gonna live to see this? I mean, in the dark days when you were going through this?
No, I
Let's say a
didn't.
whole sentence, because we don't hear me.
Yeah.
Just say
Well,
during those days, I never.
During those days, I didn't realize that I was ever gonna have a family like I have. I mean, it was completely out of even to think about it. This was just, it happened to me. I don't know who done that. It's unless I believe that my parents had something to do with it from the other world.
You feel your father was a male initiation in some way,
Yeah.
he intervened on the family's behalf. You're the only one who survived from his children.
Right, I'm the only one survived.
Now when they come together, tell them what they have tomorrow, we don't have room for them.
Well, next week you're gonna be at a wedding. Tell me what's gonna be going through your mind as you're gonna be watching your granddaughter going down the chuppah.
Well, whenever I go to a wedding of one of my grandchildren, or even when I went to the children, I get very emotional. That I am able to see that in my lifetime.
What would your parents say to the children that you raised?
They would be very, my
Say
parents,
my parents.
my parents would have been very proud of the children that I raised and the grandchildren that we are raising.
Tell us about when you met your wife and how did you know she was the right one for you? Or how did she know you were the right one for her? I don't know.
Well, I knew my wife from back home from before the war. I knew her whole family, and after the war we met, and we didn't think of that anything was gonna happening because we didn't have no homes. She didn't have a home, I didn't have a home. But she went with her, what is now her brother-in-law, Uncle Yitzchak. She went with him to Czechoslovakia, and they settled in the Sudeten. And I had stayed behind because I was too weak to go. And then when I decided to leave home and to go also to Czechoslovakia to check, because the place where we were born, we stayed, the Russians took that over, and that became communist under communist Russia. So I happened by chance to wind up in the same place where my brother-in-law now, here's my brother-in-law and my wife lived, and my brother-in-law took me into the house, even though I wasn't his brother-in-law, but he knew me from back home. He knew my family very well. And there where we met, we decided that we were gonna get married. And then we didn't get married over there, it clicked. We went to Germany. She went first to Germany. She settled in a place, and then I came later on and I settled to another place. And then I brought her over to the place where I settled, and there we got married,
What town was that?
in Deggendorf.
Did you know her family or just her?
I knew her whole family.
Oh, so you knew my mother-in-law and all them before the war?
Yeah, sure.
So you knew the Goldstein family?
I knew the Goldstein family, I knew their grandparents, I knew the whole
The
family.
grandparents
Because I
lived-
asked my mother-in-law the same question, like, why did she remain? And she
The-
says,
The grandparents lived in the same
same
place he lived, so he knew my grandfather and my grandma. They also had a mill.
well, I asked my mother-in-law why she remained, and she said, that's als hem afgebrengt,
Die werden
als hem afgehouden wird. And also, she said, all the sisters married fine Heimische, she
Yeah.
didn't want him, be different than her sisters. So in a way, you had an influence on her as well.
Yeah, that's why, once one married.
We're gonna get you on camera. I'm gonna, after we finish, you'll tell us a little bit about what he left out. Yes, Marty, you have something to add to this? Yeah, let's get to, anything, okay, I wanted to ask a little bit about, okay, so you, Baruch Hashem, you're married, you had a child, and then you came to America. Is there anything, and basically all throughout this time, you returned the way you were raised to the point of views that your parents taught you with. It wasn't easy, you did it. You come to America, you have relatives here in America who sign papers for you, who bring you to Baltimore.
Yeah, I had.
What year, tell us what year was it, and
It
tell
was
us about.
well, we came to America in 1949, and I had relatives here, which were distant relatives, who themselves didn't know exactly how we are related, but they were very fine people, and they sent me papers, and they brought us over here, and we stayed with them for about 6 weeks. And then we got an apartment of our own, and I started working. I wasn't making much money, but didn't have enough to live on. But my wife used to go on the weekends to work for a caterer, and I used to stay at that time with the child home. At that time, we had one child, and we had two. And she used to bring home food from there, which lasted us for a half a week from that food, and the rest of it we had to buy for the rest of the week food.
Tell me about what was the level of Jewish education here in Baltimore when you arrived, and why you decided to do something about it, and how you went about it.
My level of Jewish
No,
education,
the
I had-
town over here for your children.
the town here was very,
Just 1 second. Okay.
the education, the whole Yiddishkeit was very weak here. There was a yeshiva already, but there were, in the whole yeshiva, there was maybe 30 boys. And there was what they call a yeshiva katana, which was, we were teaching boys from ABC to further. There was already a big one, but there wasn't, the children didn't come from homes. There was just enough that the parents wanted that they should learn how to say Kaddish and how to be able to daven, and not that very few of those boys got bar mitzvah and put on tefillin after they got bar mitzvah. They just got bar mitzvah, and that was the extent of Jewishness that they had. And they used to keep like Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but there wasn't the way of religious that there is right now. And I had a chance at that time when I came to go into business with somebody. He wanted to open up a restaurant. He wanted to take me in for a partner. I didn't have to put in any money, do nothing. That's just he wanted my name because I was religious, that he wanted to have a kosher restaurant. So I asked him one question: what is going to be with Shabbos? So he said, we're going to close till the afternoon. In the afternoon, we'll have to start cooking for Shabbos night. I said, thank you very much and goodbye. I didn't go. And people were urging me on. They said, the wind-up is going to be, you're going to be working Shabbos anyhow. So why don't you take the opportunity now? You have an opportunity to go in business. I told them, you don't know me. You don't know my convictions. If I tell you I'm not going to work on Shabbos, I'm not going to work on Shabbos regardless what it's going to be. And thank God it worked out.
Were there jobs that you could be Shomer Shabbos at, or you had to go into business in order to be Shomer Shabbos?
No, there were jobs because there was already at that time a 5-day work week. But it wasn't easy. We had certain times they wanted me to come in on Shabbos, but it wasn't a hindrance that they are not gonna, that they're gonna fire me for it. The only thing is I couldn't advance on none of the jobs because they told me you won't find anything else. First of all, because I was a refugee, and second of all, because I was from and they knew I'm not gonna work on Shabbos even if they're gonna need me. But I kept on advancing. I finally had landed a pretty good job, but I got sick and I couldn't work. So I left the job and I started a business.
Explain, by the way, to me, just for a second before I forget. Well, I want to go back to the Baltimore here in the early 50s and so on. You didn't shave this week. Could you explain to us why you didn't shave this week? What exactly is the significance of your...
Well, this week I didn't shave because it's the 9 days, and that's a mourning for the temple that was destroyed. And before the 9 days started, actually 3 weeks before, the temple was broken. The gates were broken to it, and the Romans went into the temple, and by the end, when the 9 days started, it's the 9 days end, then when they put it on fire and they burned it up. So that's the reason why I don't shave right now.
To what extent do you incorporate other destructions within this period of mourning? Does the mourning for the Churban that you experienced also play a big part? Do you incorporate that into this period of time?
Well, I do incorporate the experience that I had in the destruction that happened now during the Second World War. And I even say a prayer, like a kina, which is called, for those Jews which perished during the Second World War.
What's the best way of commemorating the people who passed, who were lost during this period of time? And what's the best that we can do for their memories and their neshamas? What's the proper way of commemorating the losses?
The best thing to commemorate those people is that we should see that it shouldn't be forgotten, that it should be written about it, and it should be documented, that they should always know what happened to those people.
Okay, but going back to Baltimore in the 50s or so, you were unhappy with the level of Jewish education in the city, and what did you do about it?
Well, we were about 3 to 4 families, I think, which weren't happy about the education that they gave at that time for the children here. First of all, we wanted to have them that they should be able to speak Yiddish, and they should be learning in Yiddish, and then they should have a more, in the environment should be not with children that come from homes which are not observant. So we started our own school. We had 5 boys, and we hired a teacher. He should learn with those boys. First, we were given a place in a Beis Medrash by Rabbi Herzberg, and there where they were learning with those boys. And gradually, that started growing, and we bought our own building. And when they were already old enough to, and they needed a secular education too, then the boys were admitted to which was called Talmudical Academy, where they had both Jewish and secular studies, but the Jewish studies over there were weak, not the way as I know it from back home, but they were nice enough to let our kids have the secular education.
Who were the people who helped you, and what were what was the reaction of most of the people in the town to the idea of your concept?
Most of the people in the town were very much against us starting a new school. But we had some backing from some of them who understood what we wanted. We don't look for to make a business out of it. We are looking just to give the kids an education the way we understand it, not the way they understand it here. So we got backing from them, and we, as little money as we had, we paid for the teacher mostly from our own without collecting money from outside. After we had already more than one teacher, we had a few teachers, we were already established, then we started collecting money too, and then we were more accepted by the community because they saw what was going on. First, at the beginning, we weren't accepted by Ner Israel Yeshiva either. And then after a while, after the children started learning already, they learned Chumash, and they started learning Mishnayos. We took over the children to was at that time the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Ruderman Zatzal, and we told him that we wanted he should listen to what these kids know. At first he was reluctant because he himself didn't approve too much of the school. But since we were there already, he listened to the kids and he was very impressed. That he gave his approval of the school. And then we had already a much easier time to upkeep the school.
I'll stop it for 1 second. Marty, is there anything, that's also your contribution to Baltimore in its major way? You brought kosher here on a big scale. Tell us a little bit about kosher in Baltimore. Tell us first, tell us about 7 Mile Market. 7 Mile Lane.
7 Mile Market is one of the premier stores in America that keep only kosher products and have everything, a full line that you can shop from soup to nuts, like they call it. You can have takeout food, hot foods. You can have all prepared stuff, bakery on the premises, and all kind of kosher products that go on the market. There you can find it. There are a lot of New Yorkers don't even know that those products exist. But here they know, and the people go for it because it's easy for them. It's prepared already. Comes either frozen or in cans or refrigerated. All different kinds of stuff that I myself don't know about it because in my time when I was in the business it didn't exist.
What is the growth of that supermarket tell us about Baltimore, about Yiddishkeit in general?
It tells a lot that the growth of the community grew tremendously. It's unbelievable for me to see that I go in the store in the 7 Mile Market and I see how many young people are coming in there, which are from people, and some grew up here, a lot of them moved here. Matter of fact, we have every year about 100 young families moving into town here because of the schools and because of the from community that exists here, and because that they can get all kind of kosher stuff here.
Excuse me, we got a pause in the microphone. You take the cable.
Cables?
There it is. It's in.
So,
Yeah. It's good.
so this, and basically a lot of this growth came about because of Sheretz HaPleita Jews who came here and, or their children, so forth.
Well, the growth had a lot to do with Sheretz HaPleita started, and after that the other schools started to be from. There was a Beis Yaakov school which was fairly decent at that time, which grew very tremendously and became real from. As a matter of fact, there's a big demand for Beis Yaakov girls from Baltimore because they get a very good education here, a very religious education.
Are you involved in all these organizations in town and so forth? What is it?
I'm not involved anymore. I used to be involved with Sheretz HaPleita, which is called right now Torah Institute or Yeshivas Kochav Yitzchak. That's all the same, and I was involved with that very much. As a matter of fact, I even got a plaque from them.
You ever go and visit the yeshiva these days?
No, I don't visit yeshiva.
Oh, did you bring Chol Yisrael into this town?
Baltimore.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was the first one to bring in Chol Yisrael to Baltimore from New York. And at that time it was against the law to bring in milk from one state to the other. But I still used to get it in because there started to be a demand for it. And I used to get in at the beginning, like 20 cases a week. And then slowly it started growing, and the only thing I asked the people not to tell where they got it in case they find it by then. But it was coming in from New York. And slowly I started getting in more and more kosher products, and they started to get also more demand for it.
What year was that Chol Yisrael that you brought in? What year?
Well, I started to bring in Chol Yisrael in the middle 60s.
All right, I'm going almost finished over here. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think is important to help understand why you chose to make the decisions you did along the way? We covered the influences upon you from before the war, I think, your parents, the yeshivas, the rebbes, it was in your kishkas, right? It was in your kishkas,
Mhm.
and your wife, I'm sure, had something to, let me just ask, used to be such a thing as a tzavua, you know, not just for money, you know, you write a will, put all your money, you know, but people used to write a tzavua to how they wanted their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to continue on after 120 years, you know, like, I mean, I don't know if you wrote such a thing, but if you were gonna write one, what would you put into it?
Well, if I would write anything for my children or grandchildren, this I would do just to tell them to continue on what they are doing now. Because I'm very satisfied the way they are conducting themselves now.
You wanna give them a bracha for your children, grandchildren, any klach, you give them
They should be zeicher to see from their great-grandchildren the same nachas having that I have.
Okay. Any advice, Shulam, bias advice on how to get along? I mean, you seem to have done it, you and your wife seem to get along pretty well all these years.
Well, to get along and to have shalom bias is the only way to compromise.
Shalom bias, and there's peace in the home, you know. All right, now, do you come across Grina, anybody, Hungarian Jews, other Jews who are fry? Do you know any of them? And what is your attitude towards people who?
Well, I come across towards Green or Fry, and there's in Baltimore a great, I mean, more than a majority, I would say 95% that came here went straight away completely from Yiddishkeit, and they didn't keep anything. Some of them had an understanding for Yiddishkeit. You asked them for money to support like an institution, they would do it. But as far as they themselves keep them, they didn't keep. Some of them kept kosher in home, but Shabbos they didn't keep. I really don't have nothing against them. I understand where they're coming from. And I can understand why they are doing it, what they are doing.
And you understand them better, or the ones who stayed? Which ones do you understand better?
I understand better the ones who strayed away than the ones who stayed in because they really had to have a very, very strong upbringing and strong mind, strong will to stay from.
Martin, anything else before we?
Very good.
Turn it off for a second. I think could you explain for somebody who doesn't know what a Blat Gemara is, what is the pleasure that you derive from sitting down and opening up a Gemara and studying this, the Talmud
He
and the Torah?
can do it day and night.
I want to know what he gets from it.
Yeah. Yeah, but
What
don't
is it
tell
that, are we running one?
Well, learning the Talmud is a pleasure to get knowledge, as much knowledge as you can get. I mean, when I was young, I didn't have much time to learn in depth because I stopped learning when I was very young. And now, if I can get to a shiur, if I can get to listen to a tape where they're talking, it gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Go a little bit further, because, you know, you can get knowledge from an Encyclopedia Britannica. What is it so special about the knowledge in the Torah?
Well, the knowledge of the Talmud and from the Torah, you see different views of different Tannuim, of different rabbis that they had at that time when the Talmud was written. It's amazingly as how smart and how well versed they were so many years ago. And to understand that is very hard, and it's written a lot of explanations about it. and everybody has a different way of interpreting it. And that's satisfactory to hear that and to see that.
How does it make you feel inside when you learn a Blatt Gemara and understand? Give someone to understand who doesn't know what you're talking about, because you want to learn ancient stuff, you can study Homer and Plato and Greek mythology, but there's something that you get inside of you.
Well, I don't think to get the kind of knowledge that you can get from a Gemara, from the Torah, I don't think you can get that knowledge from any place else, and especially the knowledge that's such an ethical way of knowledge, that teaches you ethics. And when I learn a Blatt Gemara and I understand it and I know what it is saying, it gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Do we Jewish people have a special mission in this world? And if so, do you have any idea what that is?
Well, we, the Jewish people, were the first ones that we really got the Torah from God. And we have a mission to upkeep the world with our being religious and keeping what the Torah says. And it always, and it brought down a lot of places that the world is being upkept by the tzaddikim that we have.
So we have a sort of an obligation through the Torah study to keep the world in place. Did you see any evidence that, I mean, the Germans threw themselves upon with a special vengeance upon religious Jews or Taurus? Was there any indication from what you went through? Did you see any signs that the Germans had particular pleasure from tormenting religious Jews or destroying religious articles? Did you ever see that?
I personally didn't see that the Germans would have had especially anything against the religious Jews. They just had against Jews in general, even the ones who were just descendant. If they had just one parent, a Jew, they hated that one too.
Why do you think they hated the Jews so much?
I think that they hated the Jews because the Jews are very knowledgeable people. And that's the way it is in the world, that you find Jews are doctors and lawyers and scientists and rabbis, and they are worse than in worldly things, and they're worse than religious things. And I think that's why they are hated.
Okay. Anything else, or we're finished?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hold on, let me take this off.